Welcome back to this month's November recipe segment with NCTC. My name is Kelly Burgess and I'm the Family Consumer Sciences Extension Agent with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service in Allen County. Today we are going to be making nutty sweet potato biscuits. I'm really excited about this recipe because it's a great twist on a classic biscuits that everyone likes for breakfast or to pair along with some soup on some of those cooler fall days. This is a really great recipe because it gives us an opportunity to get in a serving of vegetables at breakfast time. So whether you use it on Thanksgiving morning with your family or just on a regular weekday, this is a quick and easy recipe you can make ahead of time and then have and get out throughout the week when you're on the go. So just to highlight, our staple produce item is Kentucky sweet potatoes. So as you can see, sweet potatoes come in all different shapes and sizes, and there's really a big diversity. There is two different types of sweet potatoes that are grown in Kentucky. There's the orange variety and then the yellowish or more whitish variety. But I would also like to put in a plug that this is a great chance to use some local honey as well. So after you've made those biscuits, they're warm, they come out of the oven, go ahead and put some local honey on top. Today you'll see some honey from Oliver Farms here in Allen County. And then these sweet potatoes, at least this one was actually grown at Red Hill Farms in Allen County. So we love to use our local produce, and so we'll go ahead and get started with our recipe. So the design of this will kind of be your traditional dry ingredients, wet ingredients mixed together and put on your pan type of recipe. So we're going to go ahead and start out with 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a 1/3 cup of whole wheat flour. So we want to have some of that whole grain in there, but we don't want too much because we want our biscuits to, rise and be fluffy and not be too dense. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We have 1.5, let me make sure I'm right, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder to give our biscuits that rise that we want. And then a 1/4 teaspoon each of cinnamon and nutmeg. So that'll give us that fall spice flavor that pairs really well with the sweetness of the sweet potato. And we're just gonna blend that up. I like to use a whisk because it just blends those finer flours together really well. And I almost forgot because I put them over here. We're gonna go ahead and add our 1/3 cup of chopped walnuts in with our dry ingredients as well. So we'll go ahead and give that an extra stir. Now I do wanna pause just for a moment and mention about the walnuts. You saw they were pretty finely chopped. So I have one piece of equipment that I like to use when I'm using chopped nuts, especially for a fine texture in a baked product like this. I like to use a chopper. You totally don't have to have one of these. You can chop them up by hand, but this will give you, it'll help it go a little quicker for you and maybe give you even a finer texture than what you'd be able to do with a knife and cutting board. So just a kitchen tip, if you happen to have one, this is a great chance to pull it out. So as we continue, I'm gonna go ahead and set our dry ingredients aside and move on over to our wet ingredients. So we'll be using a mashed sweet potato. So just another little recipe tip here. I went ahead and made these last night. So that way they can be cooled and you can have them ready to go. Another option is if you've eaten sweet potatoes maybe for dinner, you can save a little bit of extra and go ahead and pull them out for your recipe today. So I'm gonna go ahead and add these. I have my spatula here to get these in our wet ingredient bowl. So just a tip on that, how you can use those sweet potatoes maybe that are left over and a simple step that you can prep ahead to help you get ready. If you haven't mashed sweet potatoes before, I did want to demonstrate a little bit. We have our sweet potato, and really all you need is a peeler and a chef's knife to get this ready. So you can chop up the sweet potato in whatever size pieces you want. We do want to peel it, so we'll go ahead and remove the skin. And then we'll put that, whatever size pieces, in a pot of simmering on medium-high water. So that'll cook your sweet potato. Depending on the size that you cut it up, If you put the whole sweet potato in the boiling water, that'll be an easy way to remove the skin, so you wouldn't need to remove the skin if you did it that way. But if you choose to peel it and cut it up in 1-inch cubes, that would only take about 10 minutes for that to cook. So depending on your time availability for the day, you can choose how to cook your sweet potato. But it is a step that you want to have done ahead of time before we get to the mixing up of our biscuits. All right, so we've added our 1 cup of sweet potato into our bowl, and we're also going to add a 1/4 cup of melted butter. So that is half a stick. If you're keeping up, if you're a baker, you might know that measurement off the top of your head. We also have 6 tablespoons of white granulated sugar. We have 1 tablespoon of milk, so not much at all there. And we also have, let's see how much vanilla, a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. So not a lot of vanilla with our wet ingredients. So we want to get this mixed together. I like to use a rubber spatula because you can kind of mix together, get those wet ingredients. You want it to be homogeneous, or you want it to look the same all throughout your bowl. So while we're talking sweet potatoes, I did want to give you a fun fact, as I usually do. They were actually one of the main staple foods that soldiers during the Revolutionary War ate. So they are very nutritious, and those soldiers in the Revolutionary War ate sweet potatoes as a major component of their diet, as well as the early settlers. So maybe that's a little extra incentive to work it into your traditional Thanksgiving dinner this year. All right, so as I mentioned, we are now going to mix our wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. And you'll see me continue to use the spatula for this part. It will be kind of a wetter dough, but it'll get more crumbly as it nears the point of being ready. So you kind of want to just pull your spatula. It requires a little bit of work to get it all mixed together, but it does come out into a nice ball. So it'll form into one solid clump, and that's what we want whenever we roll it out onto our pan. So you'll see it looks like there's too much flour, but it's really not. It just requires a little bit of that elbow grease, as some people like to say, to get that really thoroughly mixed throughout. So you can see it's really coming together now, and it's almost ready to turn out onto our surface where we'll roll out our biscuits. Another fun fact about sweet potatoes is that 1/2 cup serving has 90 calories, 3 grams of fiber, and 380% of your daily vitamin A needs. So it is loaded with nutrition. All right, so this is pretty good. So before, you can see now it's kind of all blended together. And before I roll it out onto my surface, I'm going to use a cutting board just to reduce a little bit of mess today. We want to flour our surface. So if you've baked before, you can think like cookies or biscuits. It does require some flour if we don't want things to be sticking everywhere. So this is where your kitchen might get a little messy, but it's no fun unless we have a little bit of kitchen mess. So we're going to put our dough onto our floured surface, and then we will be ready to roll it out. Now the recipe says that we want to leave it at a 1/2 inch thickness. So if you're used to making cookies, that might seem a little bit thicker than what you normally do. But the reason for this is for biscuits, we do want them to be thick, and we want them to rise in our oven. So you'll see me using the rolling pin kind of as a back and forth motion, and then also this cutting board is the easy way to just rotate it. And so we'll want to do each side and rotate it this way, and that gets our dough evenly spread throughout our floured surface area. So that is probably about 1/2 inch. Like I said, it's going to seem a little bit thick, but the thicker you leave it, the thicker your biscuits will be when they come out of the oven. So I'll set my rolling pin aside, And my next piece of equipment that I wanted to introduce you to could be a biscuit cutter, so something that's about 2 inches, or if you don't have a biscuit cutter, or if you don't want to dig it out from the cabinet, you can also use a cup. So any cup that you have around the house, or even the top of a jar, will probably work just fine for this recipe. So you'll see me kind of putting some of the flour on, and that's so that it doesn't stick when I cut out our biscuits. So you simply are going to cut out your biscuits with the cup. We'll get several out of this first round, and you'll end up re-rolling your dough a few times so that you don't end up wasting any of it. So I've gotten 4 out of our first batch, and depending on the size of your cup, you may get slightly more or less than what the recipe calls for, and that's okay. So we're going to put these onto a lightly greased baking sheet for preparation in the oven. And I'll show you one more round of rolling the dough out. So we have these. We can simply put it back together and go for round 2. Make sure that your flour is still on your surface so that we don't have any sticking. This is a very fun activity for kids. You can get them involved by letting them roll out the dough or cut out their biscuits. So we'll do one more round. You might end up needing to do two more rounds, depending on how you roll your dough. But we can at least get a full sheet. All right. So that is as simple as it gets. We are gonna bake our biscuits in the oven at 450 degrees for 12 minutes. They'll be golden brown on top, and then you're ready to go. So as I mentioned, this would be excellent with honey drizzled over the top. It would also be good with sorghum or molasses. So pick your favorite of a little bit of a natural sweetener to add to the top of your biscuits. And we hope that you enjoy this recipe at some point in the coming months. Sweet potatoes are in season in Kentucky, so you can continue to find those at your local farmer's market if they're still open, or maybe even local varieties at your local grocery store. So thank you for watching our monthly recipe segment today. You can find this recipe by emailing barry.hyatt@nctc.com, or you can also search Plate It Up Kentucky Proud on Facebook, or find us online at plateitup.ca.uky.edu. Once again, thanks for joining me for our monthly recipe segment, and we'll see you again next time.